Hey Lynn, thanks so much for being here at the summit in Dublin.
Thank you, Steve. It's been wonderful. Thanks for the invitation.
Well, I mean, you made it happen and thank you so much for supporting it. You have an interesting backstory
Yes.
at Intel. Tell us what you've been doing at Intel in the past and what your job is now.
So my background at Intel is one of those very strange ones. My joke that I will tell people is I've worked everywhere except for the manufacturing facility and finance. So every other group. When I first came to Intel, I was acquired in with the strong arm business. And so I was more on the wireless access on the client side. And shortly after that, I went and worked for the software group that at the time was part of servers.
Right.
So I learned a lot about enterprise and software pre-cloud. And then I ended up going into telecommunications again and was part of an organization that started the data plane development kit, believe it or not, way back when.
Right.
And then I went back into enterprise and was in cloud.
And that's when the cloud
the
arrived.
formation of the cloud.
Yeah.
Ran the marketing team for virtualization technologies.
Wow.
That was the underlying fabric for much of what happened.
Yeah.
And saw what was happening in networking with virtualization. And I thought, I can get in on the front end of a new transformation. So very exciting.
So, I mean, when you were working, just out of interest, I mean, when you were working in the enterprise cloud business, did you see this coming, this whole transformative shift? Because it is a huge shift. I mean, cloud, I think we agree, right?
Right.
You know, light reading and heavy reading and Intel have the same sort of vision of the future, that it ends in a telco cloud, right? Did you see that coming at the time?
You know what's really interesting is there was always this debate in cloud of, was it going to be something that was a much more consolidated environment and then you would just have that pipe? Now, I've always had my heart in telecommunications, so I've always seen that there's an opportunity for the service providers to equalize and provide equilibrium in service delivery. So from my perspective, I was always voting that direction.
Right.
There were a lot of debates in the industry whether it would go that way, though.
Right. It feels like there's consensus now. Would you agree that you know, virtualization is a journey which ends in telco cloud?
Yes.
I mean, that's where I think most of our audience is headed now at this point. It's pretty exciting. What is Intel doing to help its customers with that journey? Oh,
a lot of things. Now, the first start point, we started this years ago with data plane development kit, with something that was para-virtualization.
Right.
And we're maturing that along the way. So that was sort of the underpinnings of, we can run these things a different way. We can actually bring the benefits of Moore's Law into this industry that's been crying and saying, give me those benefits as well. I want to have what server and enterprise had.
Right.
So that was really the start. But the application of virtualization technologies and all of those tunneling capabilities, all of the optimizations that have been stable and mature, which we know are so important in telecommunications, you don't want completely new, bringing all of that knowledge over. I do think one of the other areas that we've also been investing in is ecosystem.
Right.
The service providers have been watching the enterprise ecosystem at least 15 years and saying, why can't I have something like that? Where can I get best of breed?
Right.
And so our investment in Intel Network Builders, I will admit, it's not our first try, but I think we finally got the right formula at the right time.
It's got an awful lot of members now. How many people are in, how many companies are involved in that now?
Just over 180. We're at 182.
Yeah, and I know we're putting together, again, with Intel's support, this Virtuopedia, this sort of Wikipedia of virtualization. I think that's the largest virtualization vendor ecosystem that we've seen, which is pretty awesome.
Yeah.
You know, are you seeing service providers and vendors come in and use the information that they can gather from network builders? Are they working together via that?
Yes.
Via that construct?
One of the things that's been so amazing with network builders, we initially started it with a handful of software vendors, and they were wanting to break into the business. They were trying to get access to relationships that, you know, have frankly been very tight for many, many years, and as a new entrant, it's hard to get access. And so we started with maybe 10 software vendors, but now we have 7 service providers. One of those service providers is actually NASDAQ. So an enterprise cloud for internal use and very, very incredible latency requirements there. And we have a number of OEMs as well. So OEMs and TEMs, I should say. We've got Cisco and Ericsson and HP and Dell and
it's
a whole
remarkable.
community.
Yeah, so you can actually answer you can pretty much crowdsource any answer to any question through that peer group.
Right.
I mean, let's come back to the fact that you have experience probably experiential data, both from experience with Enterprise Cloud and with Telco Cloud now. Are there lessons that you think the telecom operators should be learning from the enterprise companies that have blazed this trail with cloud technology?
Absolutely. I think one of the main things, and I know I've mentioned this before, I find that the telecommunications companies like to beat themselves up a little bit about how slow they move. And the reality is they're not much slower moving than enterprise in reality.
Right.
We have different capitalization cycles,
Right.
different depreciation cycles, but in reality, it took enterprise 7 to 10 years to have a virtualization rate on average above 50%.
Wow.
So number one point is, don't fret.
Right.
It will be a journey.
Yeah.
It was a journey in enterprise.
Yeah.
I think the other thing that was really
Do you
interesting.
think it's going to be 10 years?
I do think it will be 10 years.
Yeah, I do as well. I agree with you on that one as well. So it feels like a decade.
It will be a decade, and here's why.
Yeah.
What we saw in enterprise is that the first usage model was consolidating servers.
Right.
Because they had the server sprawl and it took up power and it took up space. And, the joke in enterprise was everyone wanted their own server with their name on it.
Right.
And you had to train everybody it's okay to
Yeah.
get an application server in 6 minutes instead of waiting for your own personal server in 6 weeks.
Yeah.
So that was stage one. But then they started realizing we can do some amazing things with high availability, with lifecycle management, with all sorts of automation that they never thought of when they started initially deploying virtualization. So I think what will happen in telco is you'll have a similar journey. You'll start with one main usage model,
And then it'll spread.
and then it'll spread and people will find amazing
Yeah.
efficiencies out of it.
Yeah. So Lynn, one of the things which we're seeing at this conference here, which Intel has underwritten and helped with all of the content here as well, is that the telco industry is going through a period of cultural reinvention. It really needs to, in order to both handle and succeed and survive and thrive in the 21st century with all of these new technologies and business models coming at it. Do you think that Intel needs to change its culture in the same way to keep up with all of these new technology and business trends?
Intel's culture as a whole has this history going back to Andy Grove, only the paranoid survive.
Right.
And what's really interesting about that is really a DNA of we want to be the ones disrupting ourselves.
Right.
And we want to be the ones on the front end of change.
Right.
And so one of the stories that we like to tell a lot is Intel IT,
Right.
when they were starting to do virtualization, there was an argument internal to the department of, oh, no, it's scary and it's not going to suit us, et cetera, And our CIO at the time, Diane Bryant, who now runs the data center business, said, we are going there. This is where the world is going.
Yeah.
And so right up at the top, there's this willingness to completely reinvent and completely disrupt and challenge ourselves and challenge our assumptions. And we've done this in how we build our SoC devices, our system on a chip devices. See this constant cycle of, why are we doing it this way? Should we do it a better way? How can we make it better?
There's an awful lot of very powerful and successful women at Intel. It's one of the things which I've been most impressed by. Why is that? Is it something which you set out to do as a company?
In the last year, there's been a very overt and a deliberate move to do more focused development and to increase the diversity in the company. But one of the things that's been brilliant about Intel is that everybody who has a competency and has a passion and is willing to go fight gets a voice.
Right.
And so it's not a good old boys club or anything like that. It's really the best ideas will win.
Right.
And that gives you a much more open framework for diversity of all kinds to find a way through.
Well, I think it speaks a lot to the strength of the culture. It's why we're obviously on the record as saying you're one of the 4 companies that we really think is destined for success in 21st century communications. And I want to thank you for being such a great partner this year. Every time we've tried to do something new and exciting, whether it's the Women in Communications not-for-profit, which we're launching next year, which you're a founding member of, or our Virtuopedia initiative, or the CSP indexes, or coming up with the content and supporting this executive summit. You've been there for us, so it's been a wonderful partnership, and And thank you very much. And we're really looking
Yeah.
forward to seeing you next year and seeing where the journey takes us.
It'll be exciting.
Yeah,
I know
it
that
will
you
be.
guys have an incredible reach.
Yeah, we do.
So
We
great
do.
partnership.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Lynn.
Thank you.
Cheers.